I can finally clap again. I'm very happy.
Yeah. Should we start?
Yes.
Sweet. 3, 2, 1.
Did you get that? I'm so...
Also, ich verstehe nur Bahnhof.
You only understand train station? It's all Greek to me.
Understanding Train Station. Living between cultures with Josh and Phelan.
Welcome back to Understanding Train Station.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back.
I think we should start introducing ourselves in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I think we didn't do that the past 2 times. So I'm Feli.
And I'm Josh.
And I'm a German living in the US.
And I'm an American living in the US. That's my go-to.
Who speaks
German and has a decent amount of experience living in Germany. So
exactly. Welcome back to our podcast. We're very happy that you're with us again. And we have a little surprise because this is a mini episode.
Yeah, you may be wondering why this isn't coming out on a Thursday, but rather before that.
Yeah, it's not a regular episode. And the reason for that is that last time, our last episode 3 on homes and household habits, was already pretty long. It was like an hour and a half. And if you thought that was long, you're totally wrong because we actually recorded for almost 2 hours.
I feel like we have 2 camps in our listener group right now, too. There are some who say that under an hour is preferred, and then there are some who say you could speak for 3 hours and it wouldn't get annoying. But we're trying to find a good middle point for everyone. So we did cut some out of the last episode.
Yeah, and not just some, like a pretty big chunk. It was like almost 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes long, because when we edited the episode, like we couldn't take it anymore. Like after like an hour and a half, we couldn't really listen to ourselves anymore.
And even I feel like when we were recording it, we were both like, it's kind of getting a little long.
Yeah, we were getting tired too, because we recorded like after work on a weekday.
Yeah.
And
when I was listening back to it today, I realized like my speech was getting a little more slurred too. Like there were some things that I was messing up with pronunciation. So
I mean, nobody notices anyways because I mess things up anyways. So,
but we thought that since we have that material and there were topics that we were interested in talking about and thought that you guys might want to hear, that we would come up with a mini episode for you guys to listen to. So obviously we didn't record an intro or an outro or anything for that episode. We just had the content in and of itself. So we just wanted to say hi to you guys and let you know kind of what's going on and just kind of give you a behind the scenes look, or maybe not behind the scenes.
It's not really. It's more like we don't want to waste that little piece that we cut out, and it's not like it wasn't the first topics that we had on our list. We're talking about household habits and stuff like that, but it's still interesting stuff that people also mention in the comments about like eating habits, for example, and cleaning and recycling, which I think are interesting topics. So yeah, without further ado, I think we're just gonna
shoot you guys over to that content that we recorded a few weeks ago.
Enjoy.
There are some slight differences in eating habits. So in the U.S., I would say for me growing up, we would always eat dinner together at the kitchen table, or the dining room table, or whatever you want to call it. Our table was in the kitchen, so it was the kitchen table. But I would say that's tended to change somewhat, where it's more common just to eat on your lap in front of the TV, or not necessarily all together. And maybe that's just my perception, but I'm pretty sure that's a pretty accurate statement for the majority of the U.S.
Yeah. Maybe.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Tell us how you guys do it in your family or how you did it in your family. But I would say in Germany, that's not the case. That there's a lot of importance placed on eating together.
Yes, and also how you eat and in which manner you eat. Like eating in front of the TV is a big no-go in a lot of families in Germany. I mean, my family wasn't super typical for that. We did always eat together, but we weren't like super strict or traditional with those kind of things. But we always did have lunch together whenever possible and dinner together. But I know a lot of families as you said, put a lot of importance on that and make sure that their kids don't eat anywhere else either. Like if the kid goes to a friend's place after school, they will have to make sure that they don't eat lunch there, even if they're invited to join.
Interesting.
Because like they know that there's going to be lunch at home and they're supposed to be hungry for that.
Interesting,
I'm not saying that like you never eat lunch with your friends. Of course you do, or dinner. But sometimes like it's just an important ritual kind of for German families to eat together and to properly cook cook, and that's just a big difference too by itself, that in Germany, most people, not only families, even just single people, usually make food themselves. And this doesn't even always include, some fancy cooking, just like making a sandwich or whatever.
Something simple that you toss together
getting
yourself.
Groceries and making the food out of those groceries.
Whereas
like
here in the U.S., it's not. Of course, people cook, and you have home cooks who really enjoy it. But I would say that there's a lot more options in the U.S. and it's cheaper to eat out compared to Germany. So what a lot of people end up doing, and I'm a culprit myself, is it's really simple to just go pick up some takeout for dinner and not have to worry about cooking and going to the grocery store all of the time. And I would say it's much more common in the U.S. to get takeout as opposed to cook.
Even as a family, even as good parents, it's very common. And I mean, sometimes there's healthy options there, but then also from what I've seen, it's also even in the educated families, it's pretty common to even get the unhealthy fast food sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, my family, we mostly cooked growing up. It's oftentimes because of budget constraints or whatnot, but we mostly cooked growing up, but it's very common to also get takeout.
Yeah, it is very common, and I've totally adapted it. I do eat out a lot now and get delivery and takeout and stuff like that. It is convenient. As you said, it is cheaper in the U.S. It has a different culture background to it. Like it's just has a different meaning in the U.S. than it does in Germany. And also in Germany, groceries are a lot cheaper than they are in the U.S.
Yeah.
So the difference between how much money you can save with groceries is just different, because in the U.S. sometimes you don't even save that much with it.
Because groceries are expensive. Why am I going to put all of this effort into cooking myself when I could get something that maybe costs just a tiny bit more, but then I can save all of this time?
Exactly. So that's different. I also wrote down a breakfast counter, because I think like together with that also goes that in some American homes you have this breakfast counter thing instead of like a kitchen table or dining room table where people sit down for breakfast, and then like the family members just come down and eat breakfast whenever they're ready and just eat it by themselves and then leave the house kind of.
Exactly. No, I think that's something that I haven't seen too much of in Germany, is these counters where you can just quickly eat. But you kind of mentioned this with breakfast. I think that's something that I really like about German culture, is Saturdays and Sundays to have breakfast together with everyone. So you'll have a night out with the friends, and then you'll wake up in the morning and everyone eats breakfast together. You have fresh bread rolls, and you have various cold cuts and cheeses and jams and jellies, and it's just a really nice experience that everyone sits down together, has their coffee, talks about what they're going to do for the weekend or for the day. It's just kind of like a sacred moment where everyone just spends together, like a ritual. A ritual. Someone will read the newspaper. Oftentimes, there'll just be a newspaper sitting on the table that people will pass around. I haven't experienced that too much in the U.S. We have Saturday morning breakfasts oftentimes. Like I grew up every once in a while going to my grandparents for, like, my grandma would always make French toast or make pancakes. But that was more of a special event, not a weekly thing that would take place. Yeah. I
mean, of course, it's different in Germany from family to family, but I would say that the whole eating together is a little bit more important still than it is in the U.S. Oh, and then one more thing that I wrote down was no disposable dishes, and I've mentioned that so many times in my videos, so all my viewers know that I'm very picky with that topic. But even in the good families, and I mean good families is kind of like a weird term, but like middle class, upper class families, it is a lot more common and a lot more accepted than it is in German families to use disposable dishes. Like, for example, when you do get takeout, that you just eat from the takeout containers. Some people will even use the plastic forks or whatever comes with it. And even for other events like a barbecue or some kind of bigger dinner that they invite people to, sometimes there will just be plastic or
it's very common.
Plates.
It's very common. If you're going to have a decent amount of people over, you'll say, let's just use the disposable dishes, because it's easier and faster. Even though you have a dishwasher, people just say it's more convenient. But I know people who just normally during the week, if they don't feel like doing dishes, they'll just eat off of disposable, what's the word I'm looking for? They'll eat off of disposable plates and use disposable silverware.
Yeah, and it's so weird to Germans, because first of all, I personally don't see the advantage of it, because you still I mean, if you have a dishwasher, you don't have to do the dishes anyway, so what's the point? And I think Germans, there again is like kind of the term of, I guess, Gemütlichkeit, or just like we like to celebrieren. It's not celebrate, but we kind of like to make it this whole...
Yeah, you make it an experience. You really want to...
eat. And we don't want to eat from plastic plates because it ruins the experience.
Yeah.
It's not as nice. It's not
like I said,
valuing the food as much and the flavor.
Germans are particular.
We are. But I also like this whole thing about eating, though, is a European thing in general. Like, Italian and French people are even more particular with eating than Germans are. Like, they will even say that Germans are slobs with that. But compared to Americans, we are... Yeah. We really... pay a lot of attention to how people eat, and we want to eat in a certain way.
Yeah, you value etiquette and you value the experience as a whole.
Exactly.
And I think that leads well into this one of our last few topics, which is the topic of trash separation or garbage separation.
It's big in Germany.
So here in the US, oftentimes you will have a trash can and a recycling bin, and that's it. So everything that's trash, and oftentimes lots of things that are recyclable, end up in the trash can, and that just goes to the dump. Where you also have then the recycling bin, where if you think something's recyclable, you'll just toss it in there.
I mean, there's rules usually from city to city or county to county.
But I know a lot of people don't know those rules, so they just toss stuff that they think is recyclable in there.
Yeah, and to me it was a culture shock that there's only one recycling bin, because in Germany we separate everything. So I was like, how does it make sense to put the glass with the plastic and the cans and everything in one container? I mean,
so that's what I was going to get to, was that in the US, you have one recycling bin, and that goes to a processing plant where they separate it for you. Whereas in Germany, you have lots of little receptacles in your house where you have your Biomüll.
Organic.
You have your organic waste, you have your glass waste, and oftentimes you have to separate your glasses based off of what color they are. So brown glass, white glass, or green glass.
Yes.
Then you have your plastics, and then you have your paper. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, like metal or aluminum?
Aluminum in American English. Aluminium in the rest of the world.
See, I'm not even honestly 100% sure if it's only aluminum or what it is exactly, but we put like all kinds of like cans, everything that's like metal that you have, like the little cat food containers, for example, or, like a canned corn or something, those kind of things.
I was listening to the Easy German podcast the other day, and they had a good example of how crazy it can get. They were going through some of their trash that they had laying around, and they were talking about a CD. They wanted to get rid of a CD. So they were good about it, and they took out the paper and put the paper in the paper bin. Then they took the plastic actual CD cover and put that in the plastic bin. And then they took the CD and put it in the metal bin.
Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, I mean, there is discussions in Germany too, whether that's really the way to go, whether that, like, some people say that after you separate everything, they just throw it all back together in the trash place, whatever it's called. But it's definitely a thing, like, don't expect there to be one recycling bin in Germany, because there will be different bins, and also depending on the city that you're in, the city will have different, because like I think in Hamburg, for example, they have a trash can that gets picked up that's for plastic, whereas in Munich we don't have that. You have to bring your plastic to a certain place.
Okay, I was just going to mention that, especially with the glass, that oftentimes it doesn't get picked up by a service.
No.
You have to take it to a community receptacle where you will then go and separate and toss your glasses into it. And it's kind of a fun experience just to hear the glass.
Oh, and then
break.
Of course they always empty the containers when they come with the big trucks and empty them. They always do it on like a Sunday at 6 a.m. or something.
Well, I was going to say, I think maybe it's not everywhere in Germany, but I'm pretty sure that it's illegal to dispose of your glass, like put your glass in those containers during certain hours.
Yeah, but then that's when they come and they officially...
they do what they want. The rules don't apply for them.
I'm telling you, I swear to you, they never empty those containers at a normal time during the day. They always do it when you want it to be quiet. But, oh well. I mean, of course, a whole other thing, but we're definitely not getting into detail with that yet. But if you go to a German household, you will see it. We have the deposit, the Pfandsystem.
Yeah.
So a lot of the bottles and cans will not even be thrown into the plastic or the aluminum waste, but they will be kept and stored somewhere until you can return them to the store
to
and
get your
some money
deposit back.
Yeah. And so with that, we'll get to the very last point of the episode, and that has to do with cleaning, because we already talked about the different floors, and with that, we also thought that there is, kind of different cleaning preferences.
Yeah.
The first thing that I also had a culture shock with, just like with the washing machine when I first came here, was the vacuum cleaner, because most vacuum cleaners here don't have bags, but they're the kind of vacuum cleaners that you do also sometimes find in Germany, but they're not the standard. They're the ones where the dirt just goes inside this little container in the vacuum cleaner.
And you empty out the container.
You have to empty it out.
I grew up though, and it's interesting, just like I said, it almost feels like sometimes that Germany and the US don't quite match up in generations, like time-wise. Because growing up, I had a vacuum cleaner that had a bag, and we had to take the bag out and you put a new bag in. But nowadays, I would agree with you that it's most common to have some sort of, I don't even know what you would call it, but like you were saying, there's a space in the vacuum
I'm sure
cleaner
there's a name for those, but I think everyone knows what we're referring to, because Germans and Americans both know those vacuum cleaners, but they don't clean as well, is my personal experience. Or maybe I've just had.
I don't clean enough to be able to make a value judgment there.
Yeah,
but
they're also just not as flexible, because the other ones, they have this long hose.
Well, so that's what I was gonna say though, is our vacuum cleaner that had a bag was still like most standard. It looked the same as most standard ones we do nowadays.
Got it.
But in the general look of European vacuum cleaners as opposed to American vacuum cleaners is that the American ones tend to be tall in one piece.
Yeah.
Where I don't even know how you would describe this, but you move around.
I think everyone knows.
Whereas in Germany you have the smaller ones where there's a smaller receptacle with a long tube and then a cleaning head that you move around.
And it's so much more practical, because you can get into a lot of places where you can't get with the big, I'm just going to call them American style for lack of a better word, but where you can't get with those, and then you can also remove the head or the end of the vacuum cleaner, and then you can either put on a different attachment, or you can just use it like that with just the tube thingy and get into little corners, or like, soak up, like I usually use it for spiders, or like I use it to like reach some kind of corners up in the ceiling or something like that, because you have this long pipe, which is really practical, so you don't have to climb up or anything.
And it depends on what type of American style, like we said, for lack of a better word, vacuum cleaner you have. But for example, I have kind of your standard American vacuum cleaner, but there's also attachments that you can use, and there is a tube that you can then use as well.
Okay, see, I've never had those attachments personally.
Yeah. And the attachments are always a pain because you always lose them, in my opinion. And
I've never owned my own American-style vacuum cleaner. I always had roommates who had them, but they never came with the attachment, so I guess I didn't even know that was an option. But I just personally, in my experience, I got like a German-style vacuum cleaner here, and I got like, I think the cheapest one I could find on Amazon. So it's not even a high-end vacuum cleaner, and it still cleans so much better than the American-style ones that I've used before.
Yeah.
But with that, we also noticed that Germans and Americans kind of tend to, at least in my experience, clean differently. Germans tend to vacuum everywhere in the house. And even though like there isn't really a lot of carpet in German homes, we usually vacuum the hardwood floors, the tiles everywhere. And then, I mean, we mop on top of that or sweep or whatever. But we usually, use the vacuum everywhere, whereas Americans kind of...
I would say that Americans tend to be really concerned about scratching the hardwood. That's what it comes down to.
I've mostly seen Americans vacuum the carpet and then sweep the hardwood floors.
And I would say that's been my experience as well, is that mostly in the US we would use a vacuum cleaner, at least in my experience, like I would use a vacuum cleaner on carpet.
Yeah.
And then I would get some sort of soft Swiffer type cleaning. I don't like a broom. It's not a broom, but you know what I'm talking about. Kind of like a Swiffer duster to get up all of the dirt on the floor before I would mop. And that's just a slight difference between the U.S. and Germany. I grew up with I can't even say the word. I grew up with linoleum floors.
Okay.
Which we would vacuum.
Okay.
But I think, like I said, it comes down to not wanting to scratch or damage the hardwood floor.
Okay, so that was the end of the little piece that we cut out from episode 3 about homes and household habits. But let us know if that was any additional interesting information.
Let us know your opinions on those topics, and we hope that you guys enjoyed this little mini episode.
Yeah, and as always, you can reach out to us via email, understandingtrainstation@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram @understandingtrainstation. You can support us on Patreon and buy me a coffee. Links are also all in the little description on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening, or in the YouTube description. If you're watching on YouTube, you can obviously subscribe to our channel.
Leave us reviews, leave us comments. And we hope to stay in contact with you guys. We're getting a little bit more organized, so
yeah, we have a little announcement actually.
Yes.
So today is Monday, if you're listening on the day that this was released. So on Thursday, of course, there's going to be another regular episode, and this time we can finally release the episode that we announced.
Yes.
How in episode 2?
I think episode 2 is when we announced it, and now things are kind of at a point where we can bring that episode out. So make sure you guys check back in on Thursday when we release that episode.
It'll be about the working life, office culture differences, and we actually have our very first guest on the podcast. So yeah, that's going to be out on Thursday, and we hope you have a good week until then.
See you guys.
Tschüss, servus.
Bye.